Violence, however, leads to violence. That is part of the fun in being a gangster. And what will eventually separate the men from the boys are not fists, but gunplay.
How many people are murdered worldwide? In 2021 alone, it was 52 every hour, about 500,000 a year. And more people died by homicide than in war or terrorism combined. Homicide is the crime of the crimes, woven through our civilization since the dawn, whether you believe in the story of Cain and Abel or trace it back to the first clashes between tribes in the Stone Age. But crime has also become a narrative, the thing we now call true crime, a fictionalized rendition of real crimes that captivates 84% of Americans today. Everyone wants the macabre details of the most unsettling cases in history, but from the safe distance of a screen or the printed page. This is the real backdrop to the stories we're about to tell. This episode of A World Pictured takes you into the dark rooms of 4 authors who wrote the alphabet of shadow. Weegee in 1930s, 1940s New York, Letizia Battaglia in Palermo's Years of Blood, Patrick Zachman in 1982 Naples under the Camorra, and Bruce Gilden in the jittery Japan of the 90s. In one of these stories hides a photo editing trick so audacious it sounds like an urban legend. Hint, it's much better than Photoshop, and it brings a touch of color to some incredible black and white images. Stay until the end to discover how a pioneer of visual true crime hooked the eye and never let it go. New York, late 1930s. Photographer Arthur Felling lives across a police station and cruises in a 1938 Chevrolet rigged with a police radio scanner. He's the ultimate wild card. He gets to crime scenes first and processes film in his own car. Over his career, he photographed more than 5,000 cases, all of them staged as if they were theater. Who are we talking about? Weegee the Famous, of course, a tabloid freelancer with a surgeon's eye, a cop's timing, and a director's instinct, and the first Nightcrawler in history. And in fact, he's the one who inspired the famous 2014 Jake Gillen film. But what does he actually shoot? Mafia hits and street murder, tenement fires, car crashes, prep walks outside police stations, and above all, the crowd. Neighbors leaning out of windows, rubneckers, stunned faces, all with a 4x5 press camera and a bulb flash straight in your face. Hard light, deep shadows, preset focus to attack the night. He sleeps little, works mostly at night, and delivers to tabloids and newspaper with newsroom speed. That speed comes from meticulous police radio listening and a ruthless reporter's routine. In 1945, he publishes Naked Cities, the book that turns crime reporting into visual grammar, ricochets into Hollywood. The CD becomes a set of blinding truth, and the images aren't just documents. They are the way we learn to look at crime, ferocious angles, searing flesh, faces petrified in death. In 2012, New York's ICP reconstructed all with Murder Is My Business, curated by Brian Wallace. Over 100 images, an iconic recreation of his apartment, and his self-organized shows at New York's Photo League. This was not just a retrospective, it was an autopsy of the spectacle of news. Weegee is no saint. To tell his 5,000-plus cases, he plays with headlines, frames, aggressive displays. He even invents a theatrical murder section. He also used hand interventions in the darkroom to steer perception exactly where he wants it to be. Which ones? We'll get to that in a bit, and then you'll see why he earned the label pioneer of pop crime. Bottom line, Weegee's language infects newspaper, film noir, TV, right up to today's true crime. He doesn't just show you the body on the ground, he shows you the place you're looking from. Letizia Battaglia, photographer and journalist for the daily L'Ora, returns to Sicily in the mid-70s and finds a war that will last decades. The Corleonesi clans, the Maxi Triad, also involved high ranks of the state, and two of the bloodiest massacres in Italy history, and the omertà that shrouds these events. Battaglia photographed the attack on Piersanti Mattarella, then vice president of the Sicilian region and brother of Italy's future president Sergio Mattarella. The shot will expose the fragilities of a system where organized crime had infiltrated from the roots. Her photos of Judges Falcone and Borsellino, perhaps less famous than Tony Gentile's single image found in every Italian history book, shows the two judges in the most provocative nature in action on the ground among the people searching for the truth that would cost them their lives. With her Leica over her shoulder astride a Vespa, Letizia Battaglia slips in before the others. She photographs bodies, arrests faces, and dismantles the myth that the Mafia only kills its own. Her archive is called an archive of blood, a bloody memory no one can deny. Violence touches everyone. Judges, families, children. Throughout her life, Battaglia received threats, physically assaulted outside of a courtroom for getting her lens too close to a mafioso's face. But she kept going, and the world saw her. Her work changed the imagery of the Mafia in Italy and beyond. Cinema chases her, both in the iconography of films about these dark pages of Italy's history and to tell the story of her on the front line and her work. In 2019, Shooting the Mafia comes out, where images become testimony and civic biography. This work pushes schools, newspapers, and institutions to look, and to look here is to take a stand. In 2017, Battaglia founded Palermo's Centro Internazionale di Fotografia, a space to educate the gaze and make it responsible. Then the political turn. On the city councils, alongside Leoluca Orlando, she brings photography into the city. This isn't an aesthetics of the macabre, it's public ethics. Her lesson: a photo doesn't stop violence, but it can break the silence that makes it possible. Young photographer Patrick Zachman embeds with the anti-mafia mobile squad to tell the Camorra in real time, in one of the most difficult decades in Naples' history. The Ville of Scampia aren't just public housing blocks that decades later would be remembered in Stefano Sollima's Gomorrah series, but a fertile ground for armed clashes and drug trafficking. Before the schism, before the two great Scampia feuds widely chronicled by the national press and cinema, local crime was laying the ground. Streets, interrogations, stakeouts through the night. From this experience comes the book Madonna, published in 1984, and the first monograph to put Naples at the center of an emotional map of Europe. During that work, Zachman befriends Andrea Mormile, a young police officer who becomes his Virgil through the Naples back streets. Soon after, the Camorra kills him, a wound that freezes the photos in time. The images of those years, clan wars, the NCO, and local power walk the line between the document and cinema of the real. Zachman talks about physicality, bare rooms, sweat, all the shutters coming down before the hit, and a sense of measure. To photograph is to be present without becoming the protagonist. After almost 40 years, a message, Mormile's family tracks Zachman down. He returns to Naples. The photos meet the officer's children and grandchildren. From this encounter comes the 2022 documentary, Un pezzo di papà, A Piece of Dad, a dialogue between black and white contact sheets and color video today. Here, photography doesn't close the case, it reopens it. It turns reportage into shared memory and gives a piece of dad back to those who lost him. Magnum photographer Bruce Gilden arrives in Japan in the mid-90s, moving between Tokyo and Osaka at the heart of the so-called lost decade, a time when the economic boom of the 80s had collapsed into stagnation after the real estate and stock market bubble burst. Banks were in crisis, deflation was rising, and growth had slowed to around just 1%. Gilden shoots this uncertain chapter of Japanese history with an in-your-face style, literally. Point-blank distance, flash at arm's length. The risk of blinding passers-by is low, but never zero, and Gilden turns that risk into a signature. In Go and later Cherry Blossom, he brings together Bosozoku, the classic Japanese biker cruise with roaring engines and towering pompadours, with Yakuza, the exhausted salaryman you can still spot late at night on the subway, tipsy after interminable work dinners in izakaya and society's invisibles. Faces that vanish in Tokyo's sea of crowds meet the instantly recognizable draw of the Kansai dialect. A startling puzzle of humanity assembles frame by frame. The series' iconic shot, two Yakuza in a Ginza bar, one lighting the other cigarettes. How does Gilden get there? Through underground introductions. An ex-boxer brings him in, he enters and walks a tightrope of trust. Gilden admits not all of his subjects were true Yakuza, and he spent only a few days with real members. But the point isn't the trophy, it's the social friction he managed to capture. Cherry Blossom is far from a leisurely Hananami under the blossom, it's tension distilled, faces like electric shocks, and ethical questions that stay with you. Is it intrusive? Necessary? His poetics says public space is contested. The flesh isn't an effect, but a position, and a lesson in visual rhythm that still divides and brands. Out of Gilden's experiences emerges a filterless Japan, rituals, hierarchies, margins, a street photography that body slams society. It doesn't just brush past it. And now, as promised, here's Weegee's special technique. At the Photo League in September 1941 is photographed while hand-retouching a crime print by adding red nail polish to the blood. Not a myth, it's an ICP archive document with caption, date, and place. A snapshot that shows just how the line between document and theatricality was already a minefield back then. And Weegee was the undisputed director of the scene. From tabloid New York to civic Palermo, from wounded Naples to Japan's subculture, photography isn't just images. It is language, evidence, ritual, and memory. Weegee teaches us the spectacle that interrogates the viewer. Battaglia, the resistance that mobilizes and breaks silence. Zachman, the memory that repairs. And Gilden, the friction that wakes us. If there's one thing these stories teach us, it's that the gaze is never neutral. It's a choice. Next time a photo cuts across your path, on the paper, in the street, on a screen, pause for 1 second more. And ask yourself, who's speaking, for whom, at what cost? That's where photography stops being image and becomes conscience. If this episode has sharpened your eye, subscribe for more deep dives into visual culture and support independent publishers like I should. The more you back us up, the more stories we can share. Because they took the photo, but we tell you the stories that bring them to life.